Well, guys, I've heard all your suggestions, your comments, and your ideas. You weren't kidding when you guys said you had some wild and crazy ideas. So, by popular demand, today we're going on an adventure. We're going on a virtual field trip. But before we head out, let me show you a couple of things in the studio that you might have missed. Our ADT Art Studio gallery is completely full. When we start making art again, we're going to have to get another wall. Our superhero gallery, where it all started, has expanded to 3 walls. This is our first one. This is our second superhero gallery. And now we are on number 3. I can't wait to see what's next with you guys. Now let's get ready. Get your backpacks, get your water bottles, make sure you have your permission slips, and let's get this adventure started. Hi everyone, this is where our adventure begins. Miami Opa-locka Executive Airport. You didn't think we were going to take a bus to our field trip, did you? We've got Captain Carl, who's our pilot in charge. We've got Miss Samantha, who's our first officer. We've got Miss Angie, who looks really excited to go on this field trip. We've got Miss Anitra, who's ready to take on this adventure. Mr. Scotty, who's got a big smile that looks like he can't wait to see what's next. And our sister Fausta, who's ready to record all the memories. While they fuel up our plane and do a safety check, we're going to go over who's in charge of what on this field trip. I've already created a flight plan, and I've got an alternate plan in case we have bad weather. Then we've got Mr. Scotty Michael, who's our culinary consultant, in charge of finding the best local places to try authentic meals. We've got Sister Fausta, who's going to take awesome pictures. We've got our first officer, co-pilot Samantha. This will be her first flight. We've got Captain Carl, who is in charge of the flight. We've got Miss Angie, our trip coordinator, in charge of destination adventures and accommodations. And we've got Miss Anitra, who serves as a tour guide. She's in charge of sightseeing and important landmarks. Now before we take off, please make sure your seatbelts are fastened, your chairs are in their upright position, and remember, Captain Carl is in charge of this flight. Tower, requesting permission for takeoff, Charlie 1963 Lima.
27, runway 8 kilo, you're cleared for takeoff.
Now that we've taken off, Captain Carl has set the plane to autopilot and turned off the seatbelt switch. He's also now ready to share with us our surprise destination. We are going to be headed on this field trip to discover the island of Cuba. So sit back, relax, enjoy our complimentary movie, help yourself to some snacks, and get ready for our adventure. Only 90 miles away from the United States, and yet worlds apart, the beautiful island of Cuba is a trip across land and time. Cuba is known for its natural beauty and varied landscapes. The island has 3 mountain ranges, along with flat and rolling lands, a lot of coastline, and some of the most beautiful beaches in the world. They also have natural forming blue water lagoons. There are about 11.5 million people on the island. About 2 million live in Havana, the largest urban city in the Caribbean. The city was built around a natural harbor. The harbor is called Havana Bay. At the entrance to the bay is El Moro Castle, a reminder of Cuba's dramatic past. One of the fortresses created to protect the city from invading pirates in years past. Havana is well known for its colonial Spanish architecture, lively music clubs, narrow streets, and beautiful, engaging residents. Many of the colonial buildings are painted in pastel colors, making it one of the most colorful cities in the Caribbean. The most fascinating part of the city is Old Havana. This is where the original settlement was established, and many historic buildings still stand. Another popular sight in Havana and around the country are the many vintage American cars from the 1950s, which are still running. Some even call Cuba the world's greatest car museum. A ride in these cars can take you back in time to a bygone era. Another important city is Trinidad. In the 1500s, it was a busy shipping port as part of the trade route for goods like sugar and tobacco. Its colonial history is reflected in the architecture around town. It's common to see horse-drawn carriages around town because they don't require any gas to run. While most people live in the city, 30% of the population live in rural areas such as villages and towns. Cubans who live in the country, el campo, often live in houses made of simple materials called bohíos and often have roofs made of palm tree leaves. Cuban music is a mix of West African rhythm and Spanish flamenco, combined to create a sound which is distinctly Cuban. Tobacco is one of Cuba's natural resources. Cuban cigars are known to be the best cigars on the market. Tobacco is like grapes in that it takes on the flavor of the soil, so only a Cuban cigar will taste like Cuban tobacco. Also, they stand out because of high quality materials and a lot of care and attention that goes into every cigar. It is estimated it takes 100 steps to make one cigar. Virgen de la Caridad del Cobre, Our Lady of Charity of El Cobre. Our trip to Cuba would not be complete without visiting the National Shrine Basilica of Our Lady of Charity of El Cobre. Built in 1926 and situated in the village of El Cobre near Santiago de Cuba. Our Lady of Charity of El Cobre, the patroness of Cuba, is one of the most important symbols in Cuban culture and the Roman Catholic Church. In 1512, Christianity arrived in Cuba alongside some of the island's first colonizers. More than 500 years later, Catholicism remains a dominant force in the Cuban culture, with 59% of its citizens identifying as Catholic, and many more influenced by the Church's traditions and belief system. One part of that tradition is Our Lady of Charity, the patron saint of Cuba. The legend of Our Lady of Charity, or Nuestra Señora de la Caridad, stretches back to the early 1600s. Around that time, two indigenous Cubans and a 10-year-old African slave went to collect salt in the Bay of Nipe. While at sea, a violent storm overtook their small boat. Stuck under a downpour with waves crashing aboard, the group prayed to an image of the Virgin Mary carried by the young slave. At that moment, the skies opened, the storm cleared, and the group spotted a single white bird floating on distant waves. But as they drew closer, they discovered the bird was a statue fixed to a board that read, Yo soy la Virgen de la Caridad, or I am the Virgin of Charity. Believing it was a literal sign of Mary's protection, the group rushed it back to their village, where a local official ordered a small chapel built in the village of Barajagua. But soon after that, the statue disappeared from the chapel. Distraught locals formed a search party that night, only to discover the statue back in its original location the following morning. This happened 3 more times before the villagers decided to move the image to the nearby town of El Cobre. But once again, the statue disappeared. It was soon discovered by a young girl in the foothills of the Sierra Maestra Mountains. On that hill, locals erected a church now known as the National Shrine Basilica of Our Lady of Charity. In 1916, Pope Benedict XV declared Our Lady of Charity the patroness of Cuba, with numerous popes awarding special status to the image in the decades since. Now, before we board back onto the plane, here's some of Sister Fausta's captures from our fun field trip. While walking through the street market and admiring the beautiful cultural art, Sister Fausta and Scotty found some authentic Cuban snacks. They're trying out yuca fries and batido de mamey, which is basically a milkshake made from the mamey fruit. They also decided we're going to be heading someplace really special for dinner, but it's a surprise. Well, beautiful island, thank you for the memories. I hope everyone learned a little something, and maybe we can come back and bring other clients to explore different parts. Now we're headed on to continue our adventure. Adios! Now, are you ready for Scotty's surprise dinner destination? If you guess pizza, you're right, but you'll never believe where we're going. He chose this location especially for Sister Fausta. Welcome to Milan. Look at that beautiful sight. I'm sure we're going to have lots of pictures to show everyone back home. So Scotty did his research and found Gino and Toto Sorbillo Pizza. It's been noted in TripAdvisor as one of the best pizzerias in Milan. This was the perfect spot to get a group picture of our field trip. Everybody say, Gino Sorbillo Pizza! Their pizza is so well known, they've opened up restaurants around the world. There's one in Japan, there's one in New York, and recently They opened one up right in Miami. But there's nothing like having pizza in Milan. We got to experience new flavors, new traditions, and the best pizza in the whole world. And now it's time to say goodbye to this beautiful city. Even though we didn't get to tour much, we'll be back. Thankfully, now we have an airplane for our field trips, and we can go to dinner halfway across the world if we wanted to. But our permission slips say we have to be back by 8 o'clock, so we're headed to the airport and ready on our flight back to Miami. As we approach the airport, please fasten your seatbelts, bring your chairs back up to the upright position, and take a look out the window to our beautiful view of our city. So where would you like to go next? Where would you like to travel? What are your ideas? There's a whole world of adventure waiting for us. I can't wait to hear from you. Start brainstorming, start dreaming about our next destination. I can't wait to hear from you.